Hey everybody, how are y'all doing? I've been trying to make this work here for the last few minutes. Let's see. Let me just copy and paste one thing here to Facebook for those that want to jump in. Copy this and this with this. Hope you all are having a great week. Let me just finish this last thing. It's been so long since we've done a live that it's just a little bizarre. We've had some internet issues and some outages, the usual stuff. But today I wanted to talk about something very, very different, something unique for us, something we don't talk about a lot and not very many people talk about at all, and that's incorporating. And we do LLCs. You've heard me talk about LLCs, and you know that people LLC themselves for corporations and things like that. Sure. We've seen that before. But somehow people do it and they don't really know what they're doing. They hire an attorney or they get some bulk answers that come from friends that have done it before. And now, of course, SAG requires that you have to have a production company of sorts. And that can look like whether it's an LLC or a C corporation, that kind of thing. They don't really care as long as you've got the appropriate structure and things are in place and all that. Then you're in good shape, theoretically. So, but if it doesn't really help us to not know how to incorporate for our productions if we don't know what we're doing. And then we're stuck doing the same thing that most people do, which is they just incorporate and then they get done with the production, they shut the LLC down, and they move on. Not realizing that you can use this corporate structure for yourself, for your personal assets. I mean, not the production LLC, but you can create your own. And there's a reason why the elite, the 1%ers, have been doing this for hundreds of years, because you're incorporating under a law, a portion of law that is one of the most powerful laws in the world, and that's the commercial code, the Uniform Commercial Code. Corporate law is much more powerful than any other kind of law, and they know this, and that's why they want to hide their assets inside corporations. So I'm just going to see here what I can pull up. Do I have anything interesting? Oh, yes, I do. There we go. So Andrew Carnegie, back in, I think it was 1918, made about $100 million that year. $100 million that year. And you think about how much money that was worth back then, and ended up only paying $600 in taxes. Found himself in tax court with them going, "You owe more money than this." And he goes, "Listen, now I don't. I've paid every tax that I owe because I own nothing and control everything." And that's what we want to be doing. We want to get our assets away from the social slave system, Social Security, social slave numbers. It's one of the reasons why we incorporate and why SAG requires not only bonds, but an incorporated entity to be able to do your production, because they know that if somebody breaks their leg on your production, yes, there's liability insurance, but if they want to sue you more than that, they're doing this as a favor to you. Some people think it's a drag, but it's as a favor to you to be able to say, all right, they can't come after your personal assets as a producer or as a director or anybody else. They can only get the assets that are in the company. Most of the time, that's just nothing for a production. But for us and our personal assets now, that's a problem. We, and if something happened, let's say in your regular business, if you had one, or maybe even in your production, you go on set somewhere and something happens and your gear hurts somebody, and they can, instead of coming after production, they'll come after you, and the production won't indemnify you, which means that they're not going to come and protect you. You're on your own. But if all of your equipment and your business is sitting in an actual corporate structure that gives you maximum asset protection, makes you virtually lawsuit proof, also gives you corporate credit, which we're going to talk about in a second, and also allows you to hand those assets down without government involvement or taxes to your kin, this is a really, really good thing. Not to mention, you bypass all of these crazy social slave number taxes. And if you're doing any trading, like in crypto, which probably all of you should be, or at least investing, or stocks or bonds or anything like this, that 50% capital gains tax that's now being handed down here in the middle of 2021, for 2021, you get to sidestep all of that. So for every reason I can think of, incorporating, like we do in a manner of speaking for productions, is what we want to do for ourselves. And we don't talk about this. Most people just say, oh, I'll hire an attorney for that. Well, you can, but if you hire an attorney for that, most of the time what they're going to have you do is the very bare minimum, because they know that if you do the very bare minimum, you'll be back. There's more billable hours. Same thing. I can't tell you how many CPA stories I've heard where somebody's going to incorporate, their CPA says, well, you should really do an S Corp. And they set you up with an S Corp as a so-called sole proprietorship, which is, I'm sorry to tell you, illegal. You can't have a corporation by yourself. If you have a company that is, you're the only person in the company, you've committed a crime. And that needs to get remedied very, very fast. An LLC, you can have a sole member LLC, but there's no good reason to do it. Because although they allow that, if anybody kind of pushed on your corporate structure, in other words, take a look under the hood of your LLC, they're going to notice you're the only person in there. And if you're also on the bank account and everything else, it'll just look like you're doing what's called commingling funds. If you're commingling funds, then they can easily blow up your LLC. And now you're back on your social slave number. They'll probably penalize you and give you taxes and fees and interest and all kinds of other stuff, which, they're very happy to do over there at the Alphabet Company, which we don't like. We want to avoid it if we can. And we can, using the same kind of methods that we see everywhere we look in 1%er wealth asset management. Let's see. In fact, let me just pull this up here for you. So you can take a look at this. Now, I know this is super small, but this is for those of you who have ever incorporated, this is from the EIN paperwork that you get. And the EIN is sort of your company social slave number. It kind of identifies your company with the same kind of 9-digit number as your social security number. Notice what the IRS says about sole proprietorships. It says, here's where you're going to put the name. Organization name means the name of an entity that is not a natural person, duh. A sole proprietorship, one person in your company, is not an organization, even if the individual proprietor does business under a trade name. That means when it says, hey, enter your organization name, if you are a sole member, sole proprietor, it's called what they call a disallowed entity. They don't consider you a company. They consider you something else that they can happily come in and break into and make a mess of if they want. And if you have a multi-member LLC, that makes all the difference in the world. No matter what your attorney says, no matter what your CPA says, look, your CPA wants you to incorporate because that means more billable hours for them. Because now they can charge you $1,500 an hour per company instead of the usual stuff that they're charging you. So some of you, this is like your head's going, what? This is too much information. But think about this. If you could have your assets, whatever those are, protected in a structure that was reasonably easy to manage, that you could understand, or that you were mentored to understand, and you could sidestep just about everything that regular folks have to pay, the 30% taxes, 50% capital gains, gift tax if you hand your assets down to your kids. How many of you have put your stuff in a revocable or irrevocable trust or heard about this only to have those assets passed to your kin or to the kin, maybe even passed to you as kin, and you had to pay tax on it? You had to pay tax on it, and maybe that tax was too much. You had to sell the family home just to pay the tax. Or worse yet, there was squabbling in the trust that you had, right, between the beneficiaries. I've got this happening right now with friends of ours whose dad put their assets in the family trust. The brother squabbling with the sisters about who gets what. They go to court, and the court says, great, we're just going to put it on the courthouse steps for auction. Highest bidder, whoever that is in public. They may not get anything. If somebody outbids them, probably will. Probate, we want to avoid it because it's no way to hand out assets to our kids. Even a will doesn't do anything. You're back in probate law, not good. And the same way with trusts. But corporations, not so. Because you put it in what's called the corporate minutes. And it definitely sends a message to everybody who's a member of that company going, you mess around, you're out. And this is the law, this is how it goes, this is how things are going to be handed over. And we don't hand things to people. In a trust, you're taking A, asset, and handing it to B, beneficiary, and now they own it. But in a corporation, ownership doesn't change hands. If you put your house in your LLC holds the house. If you pass, and in the instructions in the minutes it says, oh, well, if we pass, then that goes, Johnny becomes a manager of the company. Okay, now Johnny's a manager of the company, but the house hasn't changed hands. It's still in the company. Nobody knows anything different. No taxable event, no tax liability, no government notification, no sale, no nothing. Just different control, moving on. Moving on. So easy, so great, and so powerful. So when we do this, one of the great reasons we do this when we're doing productions is because we have all the power. If somebody comes after us, we can just bankrupt the company as well. Say, oh, those debts are too high. You got a judgment against us. Yeah, bankrupt the company. No reflection on you personally, none. And that's really, really important. This right here, what we're looking at here is a pretty complex corporate structure, as you might imagine. Down here is the real world, where everybody's doing business. Over here is your social slave situation. Some of you might be sole proprietor, independent contractors working on what we call a Schedule C business in the tax forms, meaning you don't have a corporate structure, but you can still claim a business as long as you don't lose money 3 years in a row. And that's on your social slave number. That includes DBAs, doing businesses as, and that's fine. The next level up here is a series of LLCs. Now you can just have one, but these are the entities that are taking the risk doing business with the real world. They're the ones making that happen. Let me see if I can zoom in on this situation here. Let's try this. Make it a little smaller. There we go. Nice. So these LLCs definitely give us a layer of protection, mainly because they don't have any connection in terms of business with you, the social slave provider. Not at all. Now you may work for the LLC, but if somebody in the real world wanted to sue your business, let's say I had a client who has a taco truck company. Somebody did break their leg on the way to the taco truck. They sued them for greater than the insurance company would allow. And they went to the LLC. They couldn't get at their personal assets, only the taco truck and its assets, which is great. Now we actually lawsuit-proofed that company, so they got nothing, and I'll tell you about that in a second. But these LLCs are that buffer between you and the real world. The real world can't sue you through your LLC, and so we do our business in the LLC. That's why we do our productions that way. Now you can have one that's your business, one that's a production, maybe one that's for trading if you're doing that, and one that's for some other business that you might have. One per business, real estate maybe. Then those assets are handed, the profits of which are handed to what's called a C corporation, not an S corp. A C corporation is something that handles its own taxes. It has special share classes. It's a really, really powerful thing that is designed to outlive the inciting or the creating fathers of this, and can last hundreds and hundreds of years, as some do. But the profits and the taxes of the LLC get handed up to the C Corp, and the C Corp deals with all of it, including capital gains and just holding assets. Because the problem with a single LLC, as many of you have seen, is that the taxes of an LLC get passed through to the members. So it's almost like they're not getting any tax shielding, a little bit less of a tax fee, but almost like they're getting no tax shielding at all. Whereas if that passes through to a C Corp, it's a whole different ballgame. And this is what we want, one of these to be our production companies, one of these to be a trading company, or maybe if you're starting out, just have them all in one LLC, but we don't want to have an LLC by itself without some kind of backing. Now in future weeks I'm going to be talking about how you set these up, and we're not going to talk about that today. But this gives you kind of an idea as to the overall, what we're looking for in our structure. So that's pretty cool. Now I know a lot of you are like, wow, I had no idea. Well, the good news is a lot of this is really inexpensive. Hold on a second, there we go. A lot of it's inexpensive, depending on your state. Now, for those of you who are in California, there's nothing inexpensive about that. In fact, you're going to pay $800 a year just in minimum tax alone, plus the fees and states and all that stuff. And an income tax. So that may not be a good state for you to incorporate in. If you're doing business in a state, which some of you are as audio professionals or filmmakers or media creatives, and it's not online, it's not virtual. If you're doing business in the state and people are coming up to your business or you're going to them, there's a brick and mortar maybe even, you have to incorporate at least your LLC that you're doing business in that state. But your holding companies, you don't. Those could be in a really nice state that we'll talk about in a future week. There's a bunch of states that I love: Nevada, Delaware, Georgia, but there's a couple of the states that are great for also trading, holding assets, no state tax, super inexpensive, very limited reporting requirements, and that's what I hook my clients up with when I help them get incorporated, which is what I do basically during the day. I help people incorporate in that kind of corporate structure. And we talk about what kinds of corporations do what. And if I just go here, I'll just show you just briefly, as I don't want to take a lot of your time. Thank you for being here. The LLC that we've been talking about as a class of company basically is, it's a good thing to have, right? It's helpful. Its partner, its cousin is the LLP, which is the same thing as an LLC, only it's definitely designed to be a partnership. You can't have a sole member LLP. And to remind you, the LLC is the only company that you can have a sole member legally. If you've done an S Corp or if you've done a C Corp and your CPA said, oh no, it's okay to be a sole proprietorship, no, that is a lie. That is not true. It is illegal. Moreover, an S Corp can't be owned or own anything. Think about that. So maybe not so great for your corporate structure. Whereas a C Corp can have unlimited ownings and ownednesses, unlimited members, two different classes of shares, all kinds of other things that we really want to talk about, especially when it comes to handing assets to somebody else, the shares of the company itself. So this is great stuff. Let's see, that's nonprofits. So back we go. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. It's completely possible. In fact, for me, I think it's necessary for us to be able to incorporate our lives, to get away from the social slave number, to be able to get to incorporated status and all the benefits that come there. And not just from a production standpoint, but from a living and life standpoint. That's what we want. And if you're interested in moving into this, I'm very happy to talk with you. There's a link here in the video, which I will be posting after I finish going live, where you can just sign up. I have a group that I run every few weeks, a pod of about 10 people, and we literally go through step by step every aspect of incorporation, how to incorporate. We customize the bylaws, we customize your minutes. You get the bylaws that I've spent thousands of dollars on with attorneys making right. We talk about how to bypass all of the common potholes that most small business owners step into that blow up their companies. We're going to go over taxes, and then we're going to go over the thing that we haven't talked about, which is corporate credit. The ability to use someone else's money to not only fund your production, and by someone else I mean bank money, not the usual way, through corporate finance. Bank money to not only fund your productions and buy your gear and help you at a very low interest rate, but also possibly be able to get money for trading and being able to build assets outside of an inflationary infrastructure like the Federal Reserve note or something like this. So all of that is available. We do 5 sessions, all as a group. Everybody's got accountability partners. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun. And everybody at the end has working companies and can jump into our corporate credit program, today we just finished week 3. And my promise to them in that program was that in 3 months they'd have $10,000, within 6 months they'd have 40 or more. Well, we just finished week 3, and there's several people who have over $5,000 already, just week 3, not month 3, week 3, y'all. So anyhow, I know this is a bit of a diversion from my normal cinema sound production standpoint, but we're going to be talking about this because I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't share my knowledge. I've been doing this since 2005. So it's really good. I know it works, and I've been through the ins and outs of dealing with the IRS and all these other companies, alphabet companies. So I know it works. And I would be remiss if I didn't share with you literally the fundamental aspect of business as a production person, as somebody in media designing. It's not a good idea to be building a podcast or a webisode or something like this on your social slave number without some kind of asset protection and in the right state It can be very inexpensive, very easy, and sets you up to win, win, win. So I'm going to put a link here in the chat. You can go to that and register, sign up, or you can just email me here. For those of you who go to Cinema Sound at all, you can just hop over there, or come see us on Facebook at Cinema Sound. Just say, tell me more about that corporate credit, or tell me more about the incorporation. I need to do that. I know I do. I want to sidestep Biden's 50% tax that's coming. Definitely do that. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all. And until then, we'll see you in post.